Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Either that or we're in the extension period of Medicare Part B selection or some silly stuff like that. Well, Ken, I really like that analogy. Back when I was working in larger corporations, and when other people had time off, we were always working because I was in charge of MRP systems and software and hardware, and when we do upgrades, it just never seemed like we were done with the design and the engineering. We're either training people to get ready to start doing the upgrade, or we're in the middle of the upgrade, or we just finished the upgrade and now we're trying to fix all the stuff that we didn't do right while we were doing the upgrade. And I use the analogy of changing an engine on a 747 while you're flying it, and that's the way I would talk about it back in the 1980s and early 1990s. But I really like the mind picture of being the designer or the author, or being the discoverer, or the word that you used that I can't remember now because I was so listening to what you said that I didn't retain it. And I kind of like being in that space where when I speak and people ask me to say again what I just said, I respond sometimes with like, don't listen to me while I'm talking. You're just getting what's inside of me that wants to come out right now. And that's upsetting for some people. They want me to take responsibility for every word that I utter. And I don't know. What I believe that's inconceivable is if I say something that didn't work just then and I notice that it didn't work, I can say it differently and newly, right?
All the time.
We get to do that, right? Isn't that the way people communicate with each other in a functional society? And
maybe.
yeah, I know we'll have to do some investigation there, won't we? Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
so often, yeah, interrupting each other too. So it's bound
and
to happen that you lost your thought too.
well,
Can't retrace.
I have a pretty interesting take on that, interrupting people. There's interruptions to make a point and to be right, and to stop somebody from finishing a sentence. Those are interruptions, that way. And then there are interruptions which are like the Beatles backing each other up, with riffs. And
I believe those are the most common or almost practical conversation tools, because we do it to each other. It's harder to do on Zoom because of the quality of the audio, but otherwise, I think that's what classically people that know each other well enough can do to each other.
yeah,
But I know people that are very bothered by being interrupted.
100%. Because their thought isn't complete until the punctuation at the end of the sentence. And I think what's really kind of interesting with regard to that is, there he is.
There's two of them.
Yep.
Hopefully one of me should go away.
So the whole idea of people having a conversation and just being so excited that they can hardly contain themselves and have to interrupt, holy crap, that's the kind of conversation I want to be in all the time,
It's like ping pong. It's a more fun way to be.
100%. And then it's like ping pong, and then the food analogy is like the popcorn's going off and all these new ideas, and can hardly express yourself. Maybe the words aren't even there, from time to time. It's more like, Gunther Tootie, ooh, ooh, There are a lot of people out there that will not get that reference, but Gunther Tootie was one of the the characters in Car 54 back in the late 50s, early 60s. And Muldoon, remember?
That wasn't one of mine.
You didn't watch Car 54?
No.
You're too young. Oh, no. You did, I'm sure, right?
I remember it, but I mean, I know of it, but I didn't watch it.
Car 54, where are you? So yeah, no, I don't think we've ever had this conversation before. And so if you go into your day really kind of looking forward to whatever happens, as opposed to the plans that come to mind while you're looking at your calendar and the events that you have scheduled and who you're going to have conversations with. Um, you can get a call from somebody with an 888 number right in the middle of a podcast recording, right? And the main thing with all of the anticipation of, give me what's coming, is almost like a mastery level, like a sports analogy, right? So when Michael Jordan, or let's just take somebody who's a little bit more current than that, um, whenever somebody gets into a set of circumstances that is upsetting to them in terms of what their fundamental training is, what their core skills are, and something goes awry with that, and then they solve it on the court. It's like that situation where the home team goes down by 17 points. They have a brief conversation, and they talk about, the next thing we're going to do is this. Let's execute that. And so that starts the ball rolling. And before you know it, there's like this sense of accomplishment, and everyone is falling into where they need to be to gain not only those 17 points back, but to keep the other team from scoring any while they're doing so. Watch the Yukon Huskies do this many, many times, because they used to be very good about being down by 17 or 18 points midway through the first half, right? So the notion of podcasting is a lot like that. We don't script this. Most podcasters do not script what they're going to be talking about. They may have notes, and they may have some points that they want to pull out. And this podcast in particular, if I were going to compare this to a sitcom, I think it would probably be a little bit like Jerry Seinfeld. We're not trying to propagate any particular point of view, except for, you have a great life. You have an opportunity every single moment to take an experience that may not be so great and transform it into the life that you say you want. I'm letting that settle in for a moment. A lot of people, that's going to sound like nonsense and gibberish. But the point is, everything that you are speaking for or against is what you're putting your attention to. And I've always believed that what you argue for, you get to keep. Changing direction in gear in a conversation allows that conversation to take on a different life. And you give life to worlds in the words that you speak out of your mouth. That's something that we've talked about before. The responsibility and the fun, if that were true, and if it's something that you wanted to embrace and play with for a little while, that would be great research to hear back from people. I would say, let's set up a scenario. At some point in the next 24 hours, you're likely going to be in a conversation with somebody where they're going to say something that you absolutely do not like, do not believe it's true, and you'll have a preconceived kind of a formula way of addressing that, which may have worked a couple of times in the past, but if you think about it, maybe it hasn't worked all that well at all for most of the occurrences. And then what if you can be that strong headwise to hear before you do that thing and change whatever that is into a brand new question that you never thought of before in this type of circumstance? What would a momentary curiosity pause look like? And what possibility and what sort of things could that possibly open up that wouldn't be possible if you just reacted to the comment in the kind of the way that you think you heard it and you internalized it. Now, some of
You could
y'all,
also do, yeah. No, you could also, because I thought you were just like playing with us by saying that let's have a moment to think about it. We were giving you that anyhow.
yeah,
But I mean, and that's a classic, not classic, but probably a new way to look at it too, is to give a moment of silence, because people can't stand it. They have to fill it up for the most part. So something golden can come out of their mouth because they don't know what to say next. And that could open up a conversation too. I mean, we've had, where silence is a member of the group. So I kind of enjoy silence, but it's not a comfortable aspect in most conversations. But if you try it and see what comes out of the person's mouth, because they might fumble or divulge something that they never would have before in that moment.
I guess an underlying question is, how do people respond to discomfort?
Right.
It's different for each of us. Like, it's something we play with kids right now, because boredom makes them very uncomfortable, because they have access to pretty much constant stimulation. So, so if you have a kid you're creating an environment where they have to rest in the discomfort of being bored for a little bit of time, they may act out. You don't know how they're going to react. And I guess each of us as humans, we have some kind of a relationship with that. So someone says something that you don't agree with and it makes you uncomfortable. What do you do? Do you run away from that? Do you try to convince them not to think that way? Do you try to understand them? So how much of the disconnect that occurs is each of us in our own way trying to figure out what to do with the things that make us uncomfortable.
yeah, and sometimes it's not a bad idea to pre-invent a line that you're going to interject that should really help the circumstances. And I'll tell you one thing that you can say, and it might not necessarily be true, but when somebody says something that sounds to you like a horrible complaint, if you got a beard, you can grab it and pull it and whatever. But you can just say, I understand. And while you're saying, I understand, you actually are. You're taking a moment to take on board whatever the thought was. And I've heard people say, react to my saying, I understand. And they would say, well, what do you understand? Mm. I understand that you've got feelings right now that are difficult for you to express. And I know that because I'm looking at your face while I'm hearing what you say. And what's coming out of your mouth is not a conversation that I want to continue in that loudness and tenor. And I'm saying to you right now, I understand that this is a really, really crucial point for the two of us to be careful with the words that come out. Or not be careful at all, but make an agreement that we're not going to walk away from each other angry. That before we leave, we may not agree with each other, but we will not go away with that being the last thing that we said. So that's kind of a made up scenario right there. But I understand it takes care of a whole lot of business all in 2 words. And the fact that you're taking that momentary pause to let it sink in, maybe all of those things that I just verbally stated are thoughts. Maybe they don't come out of your mouth at all. Maybe the next thing that you say after that is the summary of what all that feeling is and what all of that understanding is, and then ask a question. That question could be a list. It can be, what do you want most right now? What's the main thing for you at this moment? How can I be a support to you? I think my experience with people who are expressing anger